There's no like silver bullet when it comes to content marketing. And that's the same for video, right? So it's like, you're right. Like a lot of people, especially early brands, are like, let's like put everything in the kitchen sink in here. And it just becomes like a muddied soup. You know what I mean? It's not like curated and cared for.
His name is Tim Bradley. He's the co-founder and executive producer at Pennant.
We're a mid-funnel focused video marketing agency. So what that really means is supporting brands with content, right? The mid-funnel focus is really built around, building trust and belief in brand.
When someone gets introduced to a brand, it doesn't mean that they're ready to purchase right away. But the awareness piece is first, then consideration. But if you can measure awareness increase and then consideration increase, I think you're more likely to then see the conversion instead of just a lot of people, I think, expect it to be right to conversion. It's just not the case.
There's so many stakeholders when it comes to B2B and so many sort of decision makers when it comes to the buying committee. Often it takes months, if not years, to close on. When we talk about the funnel, it's like, is it really a funnel? It's not linear. It's often like more of like a game of ping pong and people are coming in and out and it's sort of all various stages.
In a sales process, it's very, very common, I think, for people to lead with, look at how amazing we are. But I think more often than not, the best thing that you can do is to focus on the pain of the problem of that person. How do we articulate that as soon as possible? How do we get them in to be like, oh my gosh, like that's exactly how I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing.
One of the best things you can do though is just like talk to customers constantly, right? Like any and every time you talk to a customer, you'll get a little bit more insight. You'll know how to like double down on a sentiment. You'll understand like the little like doses of storytelling and those patterns too, and be like, great, now let's produce content that mirrors those.
I love that analogy of like an arrow in your quiver, because someone would be willing to give a video time over a person, especially if it's 60, 120 seconds. And then it gives them either an idea of like, oh, I am intrigued and I want to know more, or yeah, I don't really care. But now you know, and you've gotten to yes or no a lot quicker. Hey everyone, I'm Michael Marr, the host of The Longer Game, a podcast that talks all about the future of retail. Brick and mortar, direct to consumer, Amazon. If it's driving retail forward, we talk about it here on the show. Make sure to subscribe to catch every episode on LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And before we dive in, I just want to say thank you. Every listen, every share, all of those conversations, they mean a lot to us and they help us get our message heard. Retail is evolving very quickly. You've been along for the ride, and I appreciate you for being here. All right, let's get into it. Welcome, everybody, to The Longer Game. We are a podcast that talks all about retail. I am your host, Michael Marr, and I own and run an agency called Cartology. All we do is help people to win on Amazon, but that's just a small piece of the entire retail sphere. There's so much that goes into it, which is why we bring on brands, which is why we bring on agencies or people that work in content, like the guy that I've got on my show today. His name is Tim Bradley. He's the co-founder and executive producer at Pennant. Welcome to the show, Tim, not Kim. From an earlier conversation. Apparently people mess up his name. I don't know how that's possible, but it does kind of sound like Kim, I guess. Welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do at Pennant.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Yeah, so anytime I order a sub or something over the phone, it's always Kim. Like, no, Tim, Timothy, TIM, whatever. Yeah, get you there. Yeah, so yeah, Pennant Video. We're a mid-funnel focused video marketing agency. So what that really means is supporting brands with content, right? A lot of it is to answer the most common sort of like FAQs that audiences would have. The mid-funnel focus is really built around, building trust and belief in brand, right? So we take a lot of like care when it comes to audiences' needs and desires and sort of what they do. But my team, it's a team of writers, motion designers, producers, production, composers, kind of the whole gamut, soup to nuts. And yeah, I've been at this for couple decades now, so excited to lean in.
It's kind of crazy to look back and think like, oh my gosh, like I've been doing this thing or in this field for this long, because I know when you first start something, it can feel like insane, like, all right, man, I'm totally brand new in this thing. And now you're at a place where you're so entrenched that you probably, and I mean, I think about this from like Amazon and e-commerce, you have to kind of pick your head up sometimes and think, okay, I can't let the knowledge that I have prevent me from learning new stuff or becoming super biased about this thing and not being able to take on the new stuff that's coming into the industry.
Yeah, 100%. And we have this sort of like whatever mantra or sentiment we have where we call it like the double high five, where it's like one hand is sympathy for our clients, right? The people in the roles, like the product marketers, the customer marketers, the brand marketers, right? And sort of like the challenges they face like day over day, year over year,
Yeah.
right? And then empathy for the audience and like what it is they really need to like ultimately like empower their decision making, like sort of opportunities, right? And so it's a really cool a place to exist as a creative is like supporting brands and where they aspire to go and where those professionals aspire to go, but also like leading with an audience first mentality and making sure that we're doing right by what their desires are, because that's what's going to sort of create a win-win-win for everybody.
A Michael Scott win-win-win.
Yes.
I love that. I was just about to quote, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott, Michael Marr. I'm going to put that on the behind my
There you go. Yeah.
behind my screen. But when
Right
you
under
think
the
of
live laugh love. Yeah.
right, right, exactly. I'm going to get all of those old school like post empathy. I'm going to get empathy, happiness, whatever, and they're going to be everywhere.
Confidence. Just somebody looking out over a mountain vista.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I've got all the words. I don't need any more help than that. When you think about a consumer getting into that mindset, there's a couple of things that come to mind. Like we briefly talked about the journey that someone goes on. The journey that someone goes on with a brand new brand that, say, is launching tomorrow is very different than a journey that someone goes on with a legacy brand. Because you talked about those funnels or about
Yep.
working in the mid funnel. This happens a lot on the Amazon side of things. People first have to know who you are. That's the top of funnel. That's the awareness piece. Like, oh yeah, I've heard that name. I've heard of Pennant. I've heard of Cartology. I've heard of IQ Bar, just to name a brand off the top of my head. So I've heard of that brand. Then there's that middle funnel, which is building up trust. It's the consideration piece. So getting to know the brand, courting them a little bit. So you're introduced, getting to know and trust them. Then there's the conversion, that the actual purchase of the sale, and then there's all this stuff afterwards.
Life cycle marketing.
Life cycle marketing is exactly what I was going to say. How do we retain this person? How do we bring them back if we can't do that?
How to build fandom out of them?
Yeah. How do we turn that into engagement to bring other people back? Like one of the best things I've seen is people who leverage people who buy their product and turn those people into micro influencers. They've already bought the product, they're already bought in. So, and if they love the product, then yeah, I think people naturally want to talk about how much they like something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially when it feels like true or authentic, right? Or it's just like part of their own world. Like
not reading a script, but it's like, man, I bought this because of this issue that I had and like totally fix it. I'm just kind of like in disbelief, but like you should get it. Even if someone's compensated for that, but it's a real story. It's not a made up story.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. And that's like really the medium that I work in, that our team works in, which is video, right? It's like the most powerful medium. It's the preferred medium by audiences like everywhere. There's a lot of data to support that, right? And it's like from a brand standpoint, it's so powerful because it has like so much like nuanced decision making that happens when you're in the creative process that can like have an impact on your entire sort of ecosystem, right? And then of course for audiences, like they want information quickly. They want to be, have to be clear and clarifying in sort of like the decision making they're like path that they're on, right? And then there's just so much like opportunity for storytelling and emotion and brand sort of essence and tone, right? That just is like really powerful when you're on the path to build that sort of overall advocacy and fandom in the long run.
Well, and when someone gets introduced to a brand, it doesn't mean that they're ready to purchase right away, even in the consideration phase. But it's rare, I think, that people just jump to conversion unless they are aware of the, let's say, the category or the problem that exists. It's something they've existed for a while. And then there's some kind of additional lowering of risk by like, hey, we're giving you 75% off. So just like try this thing, or, we're going to give you a money back guarantee. So people are ready to convert, but that doesn't always mean that they are the right fit. They could be the right fit, but maybe they're not the right fit to come back. And so it ends up maybe being a negative experience and they aren't someone that you can create fandom with. But the awareness piece is first, then consideration. And depending upon what someone's buying, if they're making an investment, a service like ours, typically I've had people who are quick to buy, but sometimes it takes 60 days, 90 days, 120 days to close someone because they have to bring that back to someone internally. They've got all these other things that are on their list. So like it takes time to do that. But if you can measure awareness increase and then consideration increase, I think you're more likely to then see the conversion instead of just a lot of people, I think, expect it to be right to conversion. It's just not the case.
Just not the case. Yeah. And our business like largely works in B2B. So we have like several like e-commerce clients and sort of like agentic systems and et cetera to like build on behalf of brands and retailers. And it's like, we know that like there's so many stakeholders when it comes to B2B and so many sort of
Yeah.
decision makers when it comes to the buying committee, as it's called, right? And it's like
Yeah.
often it takes months, if not years, to close on that type of engagement, right? Or that type of like client system. And so yeah, it's just again like we know through content that like content is so powerful to like build trust time over time and build a sense of belief and alignment of mission and values and like answer all the sort of common FAQs that it's like for our business, it's like how do we help close those gaps of time? Like how do we close the steps, like make the timeline shorter? And that's always the constant sort of challenge when it comes to any type of engagement that we have, which is I mean, it's what gets us out of bed every morning, right?
Sure. Continuing to be able to solve that problem of how do we close the gap sooner. When people in a sales process, it's very, very common, I think, for people to lead with, look at how amazing we are. And there's a time and a place for that. But I think more often than not, the best thing that you can do is to focus on the pain of the problem of that person. And I think part of your job, correct me if I'm wrong, is like, how do we articulate that in a video? How do we articulate that as soon as possible so that we actually get them hooked? That maybe there's a hook, but like, how do we get them in to be like, oh my gosh, like that's exactly how I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, and then be able to say like, here's how we're gonna help you. But if you lead with the like, we're so great, you're giving them all the information that doesn't first identify the problem. There's a great book called Gap Selling that I love, and it talks about in discovery, you have to ask a lot of questions to be able to get more information to be able to say, hey, I can help you or I can't. But if you just say, hey, here's how great I am, that person now has all the info they need and they can just go on and just evaluate options. And there's so much data that's available to us now. People can already do that in the first place. So like closing the gap to get people to feel the pain and identify with that is probably a conversation that you have with people regularly. I don't know.
All the time. Yeah.
Okay.
It's really like, we have like our entire business model. And this isn't like about us. It's just like the framework that we have and that we stand on it is like what supports exactly that, like building a proper journey to when we talk about the funnel, it's like, is it really a funnel? It's not linear. It's often like more of like a game of ping pong and people are coming in and out and it's sort of all various stages. So the most like appropriate thing you can do is answer the most common FAQs, right? Why, what and how, who and where. And so for Pennant, we have this, what we call the video marketing trifecta. And it's a framework that we have that answers those respectively, right? So the three prongs really built around three principles of like differentiation, demonstration, and validation. So if your audience can just kind of remember those three when they approach like any type of content, it's like, great, well, let's infuse this moment around one of those three. So the differentiation, to start with that one, because it's kind of the most challenging and nearest to sort of like the top of the funnel, right? Or at least the top of the middle, where it's really like that expression of why, like why you exist, sure, but more appropriately, like why your audience should care and like why you're different from your competition, right? And like why this sort of matters in so many ways.
Well, the category can dictate that. Like if I were to launch a prebiotic soda right now, I'd have to have a really good differentiator. Whereas like if I'm starting a category, that's very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so that's often a challenge we run into too. Like by the time this comes out, I won't be technically under NDA anymore, but like we're helping launch a robotics company tomorrow. So different than your audience here, but it's like the category itself is already sort of like an interesting sort of novelty to many, but also how are they different in and among that category? So there's like, to your point, like you got to approach that really delicately based on like how sort of aware already your audience is of that specific category, right?
Now you're having to do awareness and maybe even education as a part of the consideration process, which, I mean, how much more difficult is that, especially with time constraints?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, you gotta have the research to back it up, right? Like how like intelligent, for lack of a better word, like is the audience on this subject, right? Like how savvy are they in so many ways? Because you certainly don't want to talk down to an audience, right? Like that'll immediately sort of turn off. But when you think about like the distribution of a lot of this too, it's like it certainly depends on like what channel and where this is appropriately happening. Like, is it like a specific industry trade show? You probably don't need to do that. If this is like on a targeted ad to a certain market that maybe isn't as aware on Instagram or whatever, that's different. So a lot of it's just sort of in the balance of that and like I work in ratios a lot. Just like how much of that into your story do you need to infuse in this sort of like 60-second video? You know what I mean? And again, like a lot of the work can be done with your sort of CTAs or call to actions too, right? Like that learn more can like give people the information that they may not have in the moment, right? Just building
Mm,
that journey in your whole ecosystem, the landing pages, the descriptions of
okay.
wherever this content exists, your sales follow up, your emails, your newsletters, right? So it's
Sounds like what
really
you're
like
saying is you
building
don't
that
have to
journey.
tell them everything
I
in that
wouldn't.
60 seconds. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
You want to save a little bit for those learn
Yeah,
more
yeah.
or landing
Exactly.
pages.
So we treat the differentiation like we build them as like anthem videos, right? They're really kind of like mission values. They should speak to like the heart of your audience, that emotional pull that you described, like either that sort of pain or that desire. Like what is that emotional sort of like draw into to brand, right? And then from there, that next prong of the trifecta is that demonstration, right? So it's like most classically the kind of like explainer types of videos, right? Of like what this is and how it works and what it does for you as a buyer, right? So those are super common and often can be like the first types of content that a brand will make because it like helps compound a message you're already doing, right? So you don't have to like just do it audibly or on a written page time and time again. It's like create this video, let it work on your brand's behalf, right? And then
When
the
a new
last,
brand probably feels a lot of pressure to tell the whole story if there are these
yes,
legacy brands there. And to your point, like you hopefully are going to have time with the consumer. So like just like on a first date, you're not like, all right, so had a terrible relationship with my dad, my mom's dead and I hated school. Like you if you're
too
planning on,
much,
I mean,
too
you never
much.
know on the
Yeah,
first date, but like, yeah, I'm out. You never know on the first date, but like if the goal is to get married and have a long-term relationship, like you've got time. I mean, my wife and I will be married for 18 years in October and we know a lot about each other, but there's still are like things that we uncover, or maybe it's just something that like takes me 18 years to click to be like, oh yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. So there's complexity there. So like maybe don't rush in to tell
right,
everything
right.
right away.
There's no like silver bullet when it comes to content marketing. And that's the
Okay.
same for video, right? So it's like, you're right. Like a lot of people, especially early brands are like, it's a big investment and to produce a video, right? And it's like, that's not
Mm.
nothing. And I recognize that. And so you're like, well, let's answer every question possible, or let's talk to every audience ICP or segment that we have. Let's like put everything in the kitchen sink in here. And it's like, I don't have a super good analogy for this, but it's just like, just becomes like a muddied soup. You know what I mean? It's not like curated and cared for. It's just like
Mm.
it doesn't taste
There's
good going
no
down, right?
flavor
There's
because
no
you're throwing
flavor.
everything in it. Okay.
I saw this thing the other day. I should really give the right credit, but it's like the most the most dangerous brand color is beige because it's usually like built by committee and it doesn't like show anything or do anything, right? So it's like I would say that's has some similarities here. And I know we're
That's
jumping around a bit, but
hilarious.
like that third prong of the trifecta is that validation, right? So that's purely that like third party customer storytelling, right? Like your buyers, to your point earlier in this conversation, is like empowering them to tell their story of like, oh, this is what I was looking for. This is how I arrived at brand's doorstep. This is how it's changed my world for the better in XYZ ways, right? So using the power of customer storytelling to infuse that validation. I think of it as kind of that last rung on the trust ladder before you go down into conversion, where it's like you're kind of to like put a bow on this. Differentiation is speaking to the hearts, demonstration is speaking to the minds, and validation is kind of that last sort of like gut check for a buyer, right? In the brand journey or the buyer's journey that you're building here.
When you think about these ads or these videos, it costs a lot of money. People want to produce them, so they want to do everything. But I think a lot of times it's easy to get caught up in brand story
Mhm.
when maybe the way that you bring someone in is not like brand develops over time with them, or they get to know more about brand, but it really is like product focus, like speak to how maybe this product fits in their life. Like you said, differentiation, then demonstrate how it actually works. That's the intro. And so when I think about that, I think about brands like Flex Seal who have these, I mean, they're just super cheeseball ads of this, guy spraying something on and like having a boat with a screen door. But I remember that. And if I really had a problem and I'm not super handy, and I'm like, I just need to get something fixed. Like, one, I remember that. So there's like a level of differentiation in the ad. Like, it's not a motion picture,
Right.
but it's still memorable. And there was a ton of demonstration to the point where I know he put a screen door with Flex Seal in the bottom of a boat and was able to use that boat. So now it's like in my mind. So it's like not well produced, but it's like it got the point across. How many people get caught up in brand versus product?
Yeah, I think all the time, right? Like,
Okay.
and it's like, fortunately, you can have both, but you can't just like force one down an audience, like into their channels all the time, because it's like it gets exhausting, right? And it's like the other things are the intangibles of just like that brand personality, right? Like that tone of voice, that person, like the persona of it all, right? Where it's like what you just described there is like, okay, like fun, a little, sort of zany in so many ways, but it's
Sure.
like that's like sticky. That is clearly like stuck with you, So it just totally depends on the brand's overall like values and value propositions and what it is that it's actually producing. But like that's brand being shown through strategically, like time and time again, right? And like when you're building
Brand shown with product differentiation at the same time.
totally. And like what I'm describing is like an ecosystem of content that you're creating, but built around these principles that we're like sort of double clicking on: differentiation, demonstration, and validation. Like those like big sort of steps or rungs really help build the trust that you need from a buyer when they're looking to make a purchase or looking to decide like which is the best right fit for them in a small pool of competition, right?
Well, and sure. And the other, like as you're saying, the other layer I'm thinking of is what is the goal that people have, and what is the time to achieve that goal? And one of the things that could lengthen or shorten that is the amount of funds that you have. So I think about a company like Anthropic, who put out this, by the way, according to what they said, all human, like actual shot ad. It was not an AI ad, which I thought was really hilarious, but also like made a lot of sense because they were trying to really capture
To humanize a company. Yeah.
to humanize a company. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but like, yeah, that's amazing. Like they were wanting to make it as human as possible, and they were tapping into what people could use. Like they're showing product differentiation, but there was a bigger message of like making the world a better place.
Yeah.
They don't need to cut right to like, we're going to help you solve this equation or cure cancer or whatever, which I mean, those would not be good claims to make that we're going to help you cure cancer. But they were saying, I did hear the CEO say like 20% of our users are not just going and querying chat. They're like taking their brain and saying, how do I turn this into a superpower? And that's kind of where we see this going. But they've got funding. They've got users that are paying. Their timeline to introduce the consumer to them and to build that relationship is not infinite, but I mean, they're looking at like decades ahead. Whereas like if I'm a product-based company and I'm launching and I'm like, I've only got 6 months of runway, like my video production is probably going to be a lot different, right?
Totally. Yeah. And I like my sort of, I'll be a little lame takeaways. Like you just have to start, you have to work in the medium. Like people respect what's sort of like possible with your own two hands. That's why there's tons of like founder led approaches, right? Where it's like, you're the living embodiment of this brand in so many ways, right? And it's like you have all these little nuggets of gold and insights and like relationships that you can pull on and tell those stories. So like at a minimum, you could absolutely use your laptop or in this way, like join podcasts, et cetera, to just like get the message out there. And that's very powerful in and of itself. The challenge with that is like scaling, right? So it's like when we're talking with a brand, we're always like, all right, we would love to talk to sales. Like talking to whoever's head of sales or the sales team first and foremost helps us understand like where there's friction or where there's like pushback or where even just like these are the things we have no problem selling, right? And it's like whatever that no problem selling is like, well, you could make that a video and let that do a lot of the lion's share of the work for you.
Okay.
Or you're trying to break into a new market. It's like, all right, well, this is probably a good moment to like invest in something like this that like helps you have another touch point with the buyer that's rooted with so much brand that infused into it, right? And so a lot of it is just like the strategic thinking and just like considering like, all right, like where and how can this have the most sort of like impact on a brand's efforts here, right? That's not to say that like anything creative isn't worth like an experimentation, right? Like I'm not saying through everything, all spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks, but there is like this is how you break out of your patterns that like can become tired over time, like it's certainly worth like creatively experimenting every once in a while around like usually around a campaign is that moment, right? But
Okay.
to do something that's a little new and novel and reminds people that you exist if they've sort of like fallen off the life cycle.
When people launch, like timing of stuff matters
Mhm.
too. Like someone, again, I just feel like I probably say this way too much, but like a prebiotic soda brand, like launching now is very different than launching 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So that has to be a part of the consideration, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and the seasonality of the year, right? And just the
Okay.
seasonality of buying patterns. Like the tough part about being a new brand, like new, like you were absolutely, trying to break into a new market with no pre-existing like experience or like inherent knowledge, right? Like you didn't like work somewhere, take all that knowledge and then just like apply it to somewhere else. Like that's really challenging because you just don't have like the data of time, right? Like that is produced like
Sure.
what are these patterns of the season? What are these buying patterns that exist? What are the seasons like beyond just sort of holidays and things? It's like what are those patterns that you need to recognize and then build your momentum in and around. So that's definitely the hardest part is recognizing that early.
Or is recognizing that, like what clicks with people because you don't have the patterns and you don't know maybe the
Yeah,
seasonality stuff or how it's
exactly.
going to
Like you
resonate.
you sort of just feel like you're in a constant state of experimentation, right? But like eventually you'll be around enough years to recognize like, okay, these are our big swells, these are our slight dips. Like how do we combat that with storytelling, with content, like to infuse and support that buyer's journey, months ahead of time or whatever the sort of timeline is you're talking about here. One of the best things you can do though is just like talk to customers constantly, right? Like
Mm.
any and every time you talk to a customer, you'll get a little bit more insight. You'll know how to like double down on a sentiment. You'll understand like the little like doses of storytelling and those patterns too, and be like, great, now let's produce content that mirrors those like pains, those sentiments, those like reasons to believe in so much, right? So having as much touch points with your customers is just huge in so many ways.
How many people are afraid to do that?
Oof. I mean,
Or how maybe like it doesn't have to be a percentage, but like are people afraid sometimes to just talk to their customers about stuff? And is that like something that doesn't even come to mind?
I think
And when you
so
say
because
it,
you're
it's like, wait, why didn't I think to do that?
well because you're appropriately so focused in the day to day of like selling a product, working on the product, building a
Sure.
product that is going to like support what you're trying to go, right? But it's like sometimes you can start to lose your compass or like lose the forest for the trees a bit if you just don't talk. You have to talk to the customers on a regular way. For us, it's like we try to, at a minimum, sort of set up like a cadence of like, great, we're gonna talk to customers every quarter to just like understand where they are in their respective journey.
Sure.
For your audience, it might be like, okay, how do we infuse sure bits of like surveys? That's sort of like a bare minimum. How do you have like more live dialogues, like virtually or otherwise? Like, how do you have one-on-ones? Like any of those moments, and especially now in this sort of like the world of the landscape of AI, it's like there's so much opportunity to like record all of those sentiments and conversations and use that to help refine your strategy going forward.
Has there ever been anyone that walked? I mean, I feel like I know the answer to this, and I've not asked you this question, but maybe how many times, how often, when someone goes into a customer with a conversation, do they walk away with like we were thinking it was this thing, and in reality, the customer told us it was this other thing?
I think more often than we care to
Yeah.
admit, right?
Yeah.
It's like that sort of surprise, or you're like, I really thought this was the pain or like the
Sure.
reason, but you like realize no, it was actually like some internal forces that happen, without your knowledge because you're not inside their four walls of that business. And it's like, okay, well that's helpful. And especially now with the LLMs and geo, et cetera, search is just like a lot of people can just do a couple keystrokes and come up with like a handful of competitor sets, right? Of like, all right, these are like types of brands that I should consider. But it's, like, how do you differentiate beyond that? It's like through the power of story, through the power of brand, through the consistency in your content flywheel that you're producing, right? And so a great way to just like continue to have that flywheel going is talking to customers and getting the insights and their frontline experiences and then package that up appropriately to put out into market.
I may be an optimist, but I have this belief that, well, one, I think generative AI has been super helpful from an operational standpoint. And yes, it can do creative and other things, but I think, and it has replaced people's jobs for sure. Like I know people who are like, hey, my lawyer that reviews all my contracts, like I don't really need to have him anymore. Like it's going to do the job well enough. And
Yeah.
I'm not worried about litigation based on this contract. And so like that stuff is going to happen. Copywriters, et cetera. Like some of those things are going to be taken. Now the quality may vary or will vary, but I believe that humans still will want human interaction. And so for the life of humans, unless something changes with the species, but I think people are still going to need and create. I believe we were created to be in community, that's exactly how God made us. And so the more that we separate from community, like I think there's a reason why we feel more isolated now than ever, because we're not as connected. We're not, maybe going next door to our neighbor's house and borrowing the sugar and the flour and I almost said borrow water. If you've got to borrow water, you get a bigger problem, I think. But we're not doing those things. And so there's less human connection. So I think people need that. And I feel like we might be coming back to that. But in the same way that people want human connection, they want to connect with the brand. And so your differentiator is like, what is your relationship with that person? And what do you even have a relationship? Are they aware of you, or is it just your product? And long term, yeah, someone might go and buy something that's a cheaper price. But depending upon what your item is, like they're going to need a little bit extra to come and buy your product and to stick around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I keep swinging it back to video, of course, but it's like video is the medium that gets you as close as possible to that human one-to-one interaction, right? Like it's the last piece of content medium type before you're just engaging virtually or in person. So like having that again, that the humanity, the storytelling embodied brand embodiment, like pushed through and infused into video, it's really powerful for brand. And then we haven't talked about like the ecosystem of that, like once you start creating, right? And so you start amassing this library and you can start recognizing, okay, you can use this excerpt over here in this way. I can use this pull quote over for this print piece of material. I can use all this B-roll that's of like customers and use that to produce a new demonstration type of piece, So it's just like recognizing the power of the visual library that you build like year over year, and just like that opportunity to be savvy and repurposing, right? And like again, not just, or I'll say it this way, like not just because you what's this saying? Like just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean you should, but if you can produce all of this content, like I really recommend it, because it just like empowers it builds your brand essence and visual system over time, which is really powerful.
And the timing piece, maybe something that didn't hit last year could hit this year, and you can try it again.
Totally. And like if you have a sales force, like they're really primed to like, they just want a quiver of like all sorts of like mechanics that they can use in a one-on-one or small situation, like small situations, right? And so having this variety of individual stories, especially when it comes to customers, or the demonstrations of like, hey, this is a really specific feature, or this is a really specific proof point, right? Like being for a sales team to be able to quickly dip into that quiver and share whatever that direct story is just like super powerful. And again, that's something that can be built over time.
I love that analogy of like an arrow in your quiver, because someone may give time. A lot of people look down on, people that do sales, but like everyone's selling something. And sometimes people need the thing and you just have to be persistent and you have to be able to deal with a lot of no's. Like I get people that are like, I email them myself and they're like, take me off your list. I'm like, okay, well, like you weren't really on a list, but sure. Like I'll take you off the list. And others who are like, hey, we want to talk. And you just don't know. But someone would be willing to give a video time over a person, especially if it's 60, 120 seconds. And then it gives them either an idea of like, oh, I am intrigued and I want to know more, or yeah, I don't really care. But now and you've gotten to yes or no a lot quicker.
And yeah, and as a business owner, like there's almost nothing worse than just like a maybe or
no response at all. I'd rather someone be like, hey, kick rocks. I don't want your service. I'd be like, okay, cool. Now I know.
Totally. Moving on. Decision made.
We're out of here. Well, dude, you've been a great guest, Tim. I think we probably even went down directions that we weren't quite sure we were going to go. But if people want to know more about what you're doing, where should they look? Will you be behind the camera? Maybe in front of the camera? Where should they look?
Yeah, probably both, honestly. Yeah. So our business website is Pennant, like the flag, pennant.video. I'm on LinkedIn. So Tim Bradley Pennant is an easy way to search there. So I'm often sharing like tips, tricks, insights on video marketing overall, as well as just like greater brand marketing, content marketing, that type of world.
Awesome. Ken Bardsley. Got it.
Yeah, exactly.
I like really, it's never ceases to amaze me how people could mess something up, even like Tim Bradley. But anyway, that's not for me to worry about.
If I had a nickel type of situation, I swear. Yeah.
We don't have anything else for you people. That's it. You don't got to go home, but you got to go somewhere else. So until next time. Does Amazon feel complex and fragmented? Well, here at Cartology, we make Amazon simplified. Hi, I'm Michael Marr, Chief ID Officer and owner of Cartology, a full-service Amazon agency. We take extreme ownership in the work that we do. We get results, and we provide a holistic end-to-end service so that you can win on Amazon. That means we create strategy, and then we actually go and execute on it and handle everything else in between. If you want a partner who's truly accountable and that you can trust, look in the show notes and get our details and reach out to us. We want to talk with you. Thanks again for spending your time here, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Longer Game.